Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series of interviews with the authors for Dance Adventures, True Stories About Dancing Abroad. I'm here today with the lovely Courtney Celeste Spears. There she is.
I'm back. Sorry, I was sharing. It's so hard to multitask.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything. This is like your baby and you have us all a part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been such a pleasure and an amazing excuse to meet new people and make new friends and talk about
Yeah,
dance a whole lot.
I know.
So,
I know.
well, we're going to be interviewing Courtney today, and then over the next few months, actually, we'll be finishing up the interviews with all of our amazing authors who contributed beautiful stories from all around the world. And Courtney, your story was about the Bahamas. Tell us a little bit about what you wrote about.
Yes. Actually, it's so funny. I literally look at the book like every day and it's sitting right on my little mantle and I love it. And it's so special. So I have to just say thank you again to
Mm.
you for letting me put my little piece of heaven on a page. But yes, so my story is based in the Bahamas. I'm a dancer with the Alvin American Dance Theater. But my mother was born and raised in Nassau. And so all of my family is currently in Nassau as well. Grandmother, my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, but they are both there, aunts, uncles, friends, family, the whole nine yards. So it's home. I was born here, but Nassau in the Bahamas is home to me. And I'm there all of the time. And so my story chronicles this beautiful relationship and meeting of my two worlds, my world of dance and my love of my culture and being in Nassau. And so it talks about when I was in the junior company, Ailey 2 of the Alvin American Dance Theater, which is when I was about 19, 20. And my grandmother, along with two other huge key players, Mr. Robert Bain, Miss Renee Davies, Mr. Robert Bain, who's the director of the National Dance School in the Bahamas, they all put together to bring Ailey to bring the junior company to the Bahamas. And my story talks about that entire moment. For me. And it's funny, Megan, in us talking, I had to kind of go back and think about so many things and so many details from that time. But it's a beautiful story that talks about how it starts at how I almost missed the flight, which I think is the funniest thing because I don't miss flights, but like I woke up late that morning and it starts on that flight and just kind of my outer body experience of just realizing what was happening, that this dance career that I had just worked so hard for and worked for all my life was meshing with the place that makes me who I am and that has continued to shape my values and my spirit. And so I was just overwhelmed, and it was such a special place to write and a special moment to write about.
I love that. And I learned so much about the Bahamas by reading your story, from the foods that are traditional. Will you share with us some of your favorite things to eat when you're in the Bahamas?
Oh, so the thing with going home is that like it's one of those things where we love to feed and we love to eat, and food is a huge part of the culture because it's like sit down and come enjoy the Bahamas. And the way that you enjoy it is by the food and the culture. And so conch salad is one of the signature dishes, and it's the kind of fleshy part, almost like a clam, but it's chopped up and it's got onions and it's got green peppers and tomatoes and juices, and it's in this kind of like big ceviche. There's conch salad, and you can have conch in any other way. You've Johnny cake, you've stew conch, you've boiled fish, you have the classic beers of the Bahamas. And there was a special moment in the story where I talk about one of our hosts who's a huge supporter of dance, and a good friend of my grandmother's, hosted us at her home and just had this array of Bahamian foods that I grew up eating, that my Grammy and uncle. I have an uncle who is probably one of the best Bahamian chefs that I've ever had, that I grew up having, and they were all just eating it. And it's one of those things where the food is a moment. It's like you have to just stop and be like, oh, this peas and rice and this like fish and this grouper with like this guava duck for dessert. It can make you cry. It's like that good. It's that good.
For those who don't know, what is guava duck?
Guava duck is one of those type of, it's a dessert. It's almost like a fluffy like cake with a tiny bit of the, it's made with like all kind of the guava fruit, and it's hard to explain, but it's a dessert almost. And it's one of those things that you just savor at the end. Similar to like Johnny cake. Johnny cake is almost like I kind of want to say it's similar to a pound cake texture, but it's made differently. It's one of those things where it's like, it's got the bread, it's baked fresh, and it's got the sweetness, but it's also got the savoriness. I always like to say that Bahamian food is a really beautiful mesh between Southern food and this could be my description of it, and like Jamaican food. So you have Jamaican flavors, which are really wonderfully heavy on spices, and you have the jerk, and you have that really, really heavy thing, which sometimes is a hard transition for people who haven't had Caribbean food. Then you have Southern food, which is really savory and buttery in a sense, like that Southern. And I feel like the Bahamas is a beautiful mix of those classic Caribbean flavors, but with like that comforting, savory Southern type of food. I could talk about food all day. I think we're here to talk about food.
We're technically talking about dance, but really let's talk about food. I love it. I love it. So tell us a little bit about dance in the Bahamas. What do you want people to know about dance in the Bahamas?
Yes, so dance is something that is so embedded within the culture of the Bahamas. It's one of those things where because the island, the music, the Caribbean nature is to get up and move. And so dance actually is such a big part of the culture in the way that people communicate and celebrate. Junkanoo is a huge festival in the Bahamas that happens on Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, and sometimes around the summer. And it's a huge festival with thousands of people performing in bands down the street, and dancers. People dance, they get up and move. You have parties and in your backyard with your family, and people are up and moving. So moving is a part of the way that we love and show family moments. But specifically, dance is one of those things in the Bahamas that unfortunately is not always viewed as a viable career option. It's not viewed as the stable career, because it's honestly not. It's a scary career. It's not something that kind of has a trajectory laid out for you. In a way. And so I've always been really passionate about the talent. There's so much natural talent there. There's so much natural beauty. And I've always tried my best to use whatever blessings God can give me, or God continues to give me, to show like, hey, you can have a career as a dancer. It is not something that has to be a hobby. If it is a hobby for you, that's wonderful. But it can provide the same resources and stability and opportunities as being a doctor or a lawyer or a accountant. My mom's an accountant. So it's there. There are wonderful dance studios and dance institutions there who really are dedicated. Mr. Robert Bay, Mr. Lawrence Cannell, Ms. Nani Price. There's so many of them who have these studios and are cultivating, but I think that they also would love the support on a larger government level to say, hey, we want to have dancers from here that were trained here. So it's there, it's a part of the culture. And my hope is to really see it be treated with the same, respect and love and like charisma that sports and other career options can.
I loved the part in your story where you talked about how really the dance that's done during that festival is based in West African dance, and how much technique and stamina and ability it takes for these dancers to dance like that all day, all night, to keep moving. And I think someone in your story said, wow, it sounds like they're really well trained. It's just a different type of training that they would need to become like an Alvin Ailey dancer, for instance.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, Junkanoo is long. It's a full, it can start anywhere from 10 p.m. in the evening and it goes up until, the next morning. And not morning by like 1 a.m. I mean like 9 to like the sun is up when that finishes. And both groups do 2 full laps, which is miles and miles and stamina. And so, the music, the band, the instruments are all cowbells and sheepskin drums and trumpets and trombones and drums, and it's so much. And so these dancers are embodying all of that bass and that music and that nuance. And next thing you know, you're watching and I'm like, oh my gosh. And as I got older, like this is fully embedded within West African culture. Junkanoo is a celebration. It was a celebration of emancipation and liberation. And so a lot of that comes from our ancestors, and our ancestors were trained and brought up with these styles of dance. And so I remember having a parent, I was hosting a workshop down in the Bahamas, and I had a parent message me, and she was like, well, my daughter's only ever done Junkanoo. Does that count as dance training for your workshop? And I was like, yes, that's a whole study. That is yes. Big YES, yes, because it's stamina, it's nuance, it's live music, it's live art, it's being able to stay focused with variables of people screaming and cheering and wind and rain and whatever's happening outside. And so it's so cherished and so loved. And sometimes I think because it's just what we do all the time is we read Junkanoo every single year. We have it. Sometimes it's just like, oh, that's just that. That's just junk. That's just our yearly celebration. When I'm like, no, this is a performance. This is a 10 to 12 hour long stamina building performance that these dancers have. I don't think I'd be able to do. I'm like, it's amazing to me. And so I've always been so amazed and hope that they realize how rich that type of training is.
Yes. The story this story that you wrote has so many different themes, like family, bringing together traditions, and also this idea of the organization that you co-founded, Artsy. Will you tell us a little bit about that and what the mission of that organization is?
Yes. So Artsy started out actually at a really, I want to say not the most fun time in my life, which I always find to be really ironic and poetic at the same time. I had just finished Dancing with Ailey 2 and was in this really big year of auditioning. And I mean, auditioning. I went to hundreds of auditions and was getting no and no and no and no. And I wasn't finding work. And I remember having this moment of remembering my why. And my why I do what I do was really kind of solidified when I went down to the Bahamas with Ailey too. And I remember, it's in the book, Mr. Bain looking at me and it's like, we have to continue this. We have to continue this sharing of dance. And it's funny because I feel like I remembered him saying that at a really difficult time in my life. I was like, well, you know what? If I can't dance right now because for some reason it's not lined up in my cards, I'm still going to give. I'm still going to take everything that I have and just share it. And so I had this idea to host a workshop there and start this small organization that would focus on dance and different styles and college prep and wellness. And I brought the idea to my brother, Asa Carey, and he is just wonderful at what he does. He has an arts background. We both went to the Baltimore School for the Arts. He's been around artists, but he also is just so skilled in events and logistics and budgets and planning and things that I just have learned so much from. So I brought the idea to him and we co-founded it together. And it's just been a really beautiful dialogue and sharing ever since, of classes, of, I feel so fortunate and so blessed to be in New York City surrounded by all of it. Every artist, every Broadway performance, every singer and dancer. And I just remember waking up one day and being like, well, there's no way that this island that I love, these students are watching these people on YouTube. And I know this person and I can just say, hey, do you want to come down and share And for the most part, everyone's always like, yes, of course, we love what we do. In the end, it's the Bahamas. So it's been beautiful. And this year coming up in 2021 will make it 5 years. And
Mm.
we've had over 3 international workshops. We've flown in over um, 20 different faculty members. We've fundraised, both myself and Asa, Mr. Bain, my grandmother, writing proposals, getting support from organizations, hosting workshops, wellness, college prep. And it's just this kind of platform in a way that just celebrates dance and all that it can be.
What's your vision for dance in the Caribbean? What would you like to see happen there through your organization and through the other amazing organizations and teachers and studios like the ones you mentioned?
I want a performing arts theater. I want like that I say that to everybody. I want there to be like the Bahamas Center for the Performing Arts. I always say, and I'm going to say it, and I feel like if I ever am like in the room with prime minister or someone, that's like the first thing I say, because, you know, first of all, the Bahamas is the closest Caribbean island to the US. We're only 30 minutes from Miami. My flight from New York to Nassau is about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That is shorter than the train ride from here to DC. So we're so close. It is. It's right there. And you know, I've had so many people say, "Oh, you know, I would love to have Ailey, or I'd love to have Complexions, or about the Lion King." And I was like, "That's great. Like we're close enough, but we need a space. We need a space that brings art regularly to." To this area. I actually had a really close friend of mine who's in the book. Her name is Merkiva Johnson, and we did a panel once. And she said, "There's only so much that as a student I could dream of if I couldn't see it for myself." And I think that we will have such a different wave of artists if these young kids and these young students, or even adults, are exposed to it live. I mean, who knows when that'll happen again because of everything that's kind of transpired. But firstly, I think it starts with a center, a beautiful performing arts center where these companies, and not just dance, but orchestras and productions and Shakespeare and jazz quartets and dance companies all can just come and do what they do and lift up the island that way. I really also want to see dance implemented within schools. I think whether you're trying to be the next Misty Copeland or you just love to move your body, there's something to learn about the discipline of dance. And I think it being integrated into school systems and into the public education system could be a huge shift for students in their self-confidence and the way that they build. I really want it. It's loved and it's cherished. I just think it deserves its moment of spotlight for a moment so that we could focus on it and really you let it do what it does. Like dance will do all of it. You just got to give it the platform to do the work.
So what tips would you give out there to, let's say, dancers who were maybe just trying to get their start and then the pandemic hit? You know, this has really shaken our world, and I felt so inspired when you shared that you started this organization when you were having this rough moment in your career, and now is another rough moment in many dancers' careers. What would you tell them?
I would tell them you always have to go back to your why. You always have to go back to the why you're doing all of this in the first place. Because as you know, and as everybody in Dance Adventures knows, dance is so not easy. It is, we are not in this because we think that we're one day going to become these millionaires and billionaires. We are literally in it because we love what we do, but it is so hard. My goodness, it is exhausting. It's tiring. You're always in pain. You are overworked and underpaid. It's one of those things that it's just not easy. It's not glamorous. But we love what we do and we're not in it for the glamour. And the only reason that we do it is because we're so connected to why we do it. And maybe it's the love of it, but I always encourage people when you're having those hard times like I had, that I'm still having. I mean, this pandemic was really difficult for me. But I would remember my why. I'm doing this because I know that God gave me dance to be a vessel to make the world a better place. And then all of a sudden, you take that pressure off of yourself and you remember the whole picture. And when you realize that it's really not about you, it's not about you at all. It's about people. It's about using your gifts to affect people, to make people feel loved and accepted and cherished. Once you kind of do that, it becomes this beautiful journey where even the good and the bad mean something. The good, the greatest day and the hardest day are all serving a greater purpose, and it becomes less personal and more projected. So I would always say connect to the why.
Gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for your beautiful contribution to Dance Adventures and for the work that you do with Alvin, Ailey, being up on stage, allowing us to see the gift, your gifts, to share them with us, and also for the work that you're doing down in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, bringing dance there. I'm so excited to see what happens. And knowing you, I have a feeling that this vision you have around a performing arts center could very well happen.
I all the time I get crazy to talk about dance, and I will say it to everyone. So who knows? I speak it. I'm like, this has to happen. I actually have this like dream of my grandfather, who, when you read the story, who's just a huge integral part of my life and my character and my upbringing. And the story's kind of told through this focal point of the way that he saw me. And I actually have always dreamed of having this theater and then having a seat that was like his, like a seat dedicated to him in his honor. Because he always told me it would happen. He always knew that that's something I wanted. So it's got to happen.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
No, thank you so much, and thank you again. And it was a pleasure to just reflect, and I think I needed it. So, thank you.